Thanks for hanging. It is the new year, so happy new year, friends. I'd take a second, actually, when I think about it. It really blows my mind. The last 9 months, I've been working mostly, as a freelancer, traveling around the world and commentating and analyzing fights. But when I get to hang out here in my room, either here or in one of our studios that we, do on the road or wherever by myself or with my buddy Mark, and just chat with you guys about great fights, it's really cool. And sometimes 10, 20,000 people watch it, and sometimes 100,000 people have watched our stuff. I did an analysis of McGregor going into it, and Dana White sent his guy to call me 2 days later, and they had me do it for ESPN. So it's been an incredible thing. Very quickly, we're going to talk about Ho Choi versus Jeremy Stephens coming up January 14th. I'm kind of hoping to get down there. There was some talk of me coming down, being part of his team to make some content around it. But I don't know if that's happening. As soon as Ho Choi became the main event, he wanted to concentrate on the fighting and less so on the making content and promoting. But Ho Choi versus Jeremy Stephens, amazing fight. I have been getting some people that continually do ask me, and it's very kind of them. They ask me for sort of technique breakdowns, kind of like how I used to do. This happened and why did this, etc. Punch, kick, low kick, whatever. And so I've been doing those and doing them in short versions on YouTube, on Twitter and Instagram. So on Twitter and Instagram, I'm at Robin Black MMA, and I've been doing the short technique breakdowns there because people love them, and I love doing them. But this is my YouTube channel for me, and I just love to dig in deep. And so that's what we've been doing, and I appreciate you guys hanging with me for that. I really do. It's really fucking cool. There are a lot of different ways to look at fights. It's my feeling that we continue to find newer and different ways to look at it, to peel back some layers of the onion as best as we can. And that allows us to watch fights and feel them, experience them in different ways. I also think it's really important for the audience and for the sport and for the fighters that we continue to find new ways to see these fights. Because if we just have the same observations, they'll all start to feel commodified. Much like how some of the presentation sometimes feels now. Same things happening, we're talking about them the same way, we have the same conversations. Eventually you'll get bored of that. And you should never get bored of fighting. Fighting is the most beautiful art form in the world. So, like I said, if you like this, it's shoprobinblack.com. We got some t-shirts, and let's talk about fights. Ho Choi versus Jeremy Stephens. Amazing fight. Incredible fight. Fascinating fight. Ho Choi, I've been fortunate enough to break down his work for many years now. Years before he was in the UFC, I had him as my #1 prospect to watch in the world because I got to commentate a show out of Japan called Deep. And when we saw Ho start to evolve at literally 19 years old, there is the thin slicing of observing his skills allowed you to see where he was at. And so sometimes we see somebody who's exceptionally better or more capable of winning and performing in certain fights. And you wonder, what is it? Is he faster? Is he stronger? Sometimes it is these things. Sometimes it's just, a thin slice of something. So the thin slice that people are mastering in the world today, and you see it's the thing that is happening the quickest, is the relationship of distance. Some coaches are calling it, I forget now. There's a term of how long, exposure, that's the term, exposure. How long are you exposed to his clean weapons? So if I'm way far away, when Wonder Boy is far away, there's almost zero exposure. You need to do 1 or 2 steps to get into a situation of exposure where he's exposed to your weapons. And all he needs to do is maintain that space. So there's sort of zero exposure happening. Then you'll see when Jeremy Stephens fights Gilbert Melendez, there will be moments of great exposure, right? Exposure of your chin and his chin, your liver and his weapons, sorry, this one. All of the tools that are available and all of the targets that are available, how long are they exposed to danger, right? So the great fighters, the great young fighters, Francis Ngannou, makes you exposed to power, and for long periods of time you feel like you're not. So it's his ability to put you into a situation where he can hit you. It's not just how hard Francis Ngannou hits. It's how he's able to hit you. Why could he hit these guys? Is he faster? Is he stronger? Does he punch? It's his ability to put himself into a situation. Alistair Overeem has fought the very best in the world. He knows where he's safe and unsafe, but he was wrong. He was wrong because of Ngannou's ability to put himself into a situation that Overeem doesn't recognize as dangerous. Okay, so that's what that's the next stage. That's what's been happening. And Ho Choi has been very good at this for a long time. He was doing it before we understood really what it was. You're just looking, going, why is this kid fucking flooring everybody? Oh, his right hand is really powerful. Well, so is this guy. So is Jack Smith. So is, like, you know, you can point to anyone who punches hard. But the reason it doesn't matter is because they can't really hit you. Because in movement, you're available, then you're unavailable, then you're available, then you're unavailable. You have to create yourself a scenario in which I can land it on your chin. And I have to be able to do it in such a way that either you're not in that moment where you can hit me back, or I made you miss, or I made you misunderstand range. And that is the Korean game. That's what I was calling it when I traveled to Korea earlier this year. I studied Ho Choi in the gym, and I studied the Korean Zombie in the gym, and I studied the Korean Zombie teaching his young fighters, amateur and young pros, and that was their game. That was their game. That's been Conor McGregor's game. When you see him against my man Eddie Alvarez, he was in a game where Eddie was like unsure sort of where, and boom, he's hit. And then Eddie goes to stalk him and he misses. And Aldo goes to throw hard and he's not there. The game of exposure, the moments of exposure to danger and the moments of you being exposed to my danger. That's the game. That's the game. And so this is what I'm talking about, to take a brief touch on what I said earlier. Again, it would mean a lot to me. You go to Instagram or Twitter and check out my short form Ho Choi breakdowns. To me, him touching, making the hand move and hitting that's not as challenging to me, and it's not as exciting to me as trying to figure out the grand scope of the systems that are at play. What are the systems at play? Nobody is just trying to figure out how to land a calf kick. We'll pick up, oh, calf kicks are really, in vogue. It's just a weapon. The calf kick is landing because where you put weight on your foot and the distance at which you can land it. There's a million reasons. Calf kicks didn't just materialize, and they won't just go away. They'll happen because of where we are in relationship to each other. That's everything. That's everything in fighting. Everything. And when I say it is fun to go and make those breakdowns, it just comes so quickly and easily. It's more interesting to sit there and really try to figure out what's happening. So that's why I flew to Korea to study Ho Choi. And what you found is much like these guys. And again, we will often look for a term, and then we will feel that we've recognized that term, and therefore we understand. So, a few years back, myself or others brought out a term that wasn't being used a great deal. That was range management or distance management. Sometimes the flaw is we see something, we recognize the word. So Stephen Thompson is far away, and I'm trying to think of Johnny Hendricks, can't reach him. There it is, distance management. We know it now. All we did was really recognize a word. Or sometimes we'll say, oh, Stephen Thompson, look at that beautiful timing. What's comedic timing? What's the timing on a punch? How does Ho Choi, what does it really mean when he lands with beautiful timing? What's really happening? And so to me, this is the joy of this, is to try to not just figure out what's going on, but find the language so we can enrich the experience for the audience. So I know I've taken a long time to get to this point, but that is the game, the modern game, the Korean game to a degree. We've seen it in other places, and it shouldn't just be allotted to one country or one culture or one school of fighting. But when I went to Korea, this was when the Korean Zombie was training his young fighters, they were playing with fencing-like positioning and distancing in ways that were in times more important than punches and kicks. The young new fighters that he had, like young athletes, they were playing games of fencing distance. And they weren't even learning a right hook or a left hook or an uppercut or a kick, because those are just tools. Those tools are not going to matter to a great degree if you don't know when to throw them or how to throw them or how to throw them safely. Okay, so the Korean representation of mixed martial arts in 2017 from my study over there was this. It's also happening all over. McGregor was playing that game before people understood what was going on. One of my early breakdowns you can see on the old Fight Network, Flim Flam, distance management, and the Celtic Cross, that was his game. Flim Flam to keep you, uncertain and hesitant, distance management so you couldn't touch him, and then he lands his left hand. He beat everybody just with that combination of tools. Stephen Thompson, of course, brought it to another level. Tyron Woodley had to understand it to win a fight. There were different ways he could win the fight, but had to understand it to win that fight. Damian Maia needs distance management, or whatever we want to call it, relationship, connection, exposure. He needs to use it in reverse, and so does Khabib. Khabib wants to use that in reverse. Take it all away. Take space away. Make no gap between you. So this is the game. Now, when we look back to a step or two earlier in the evolution of the game, why was Jeremy Stephens, so now we bring in Jeremy Stephens, why was he so rare for a 155-pounder or a 145-pounder to be able to land with such power? Power, old school power. And I don't mean old school because there's older and older and older school, so that's probably not the right term. Last generation power there was this bizarre and interesting, fascinating connection between mobility and power. So let's try this comparison. Dominic Cruz and Jeremy Stephens. Dominic Cruz and Jeremy Stephens. Dominic Cruz had incredible mobility, and people back then would say, oh, he can't crack an egg. He doesn't hurt anybody. He's a decision machine. All these things. Jeremy Stephens, not so super mobile, but hit with crushing power, right? And how are those things connected? How and why does that relationship push and pull? And the answer to that, some people are asking me questions. If you're listening on SoundCloud or iTunes or whatever, I'm also doing this on YouTube, and there's questions popping up, and I'll get to some of them at the end. But I really want to focus on this fight because I'm so excited about it. Doing a little do Ho Choi breakdown. Also, if you're on iTunes, you can't see this awesome Hot Lava shirt I'm wearing, but you can get it at shoprobinblack.com. And I got a few other ones, Flim Flam and stuff. We're pretty excited about them. So relationship between mobility and power. So the lighter on the feet Dominic Cruz was, the lighter and less connected to the earth. So you want to move. How do you move? You're lightly connected to the earth, barely reducing the moment of connection between your feet or whatever is touching the ground. If you're walking on your hands or on all fours, whatever is touching the ground, reducing the moments of connection between you and the earth, or in this case, the mat. That's how you get light on your feet. Quick direction change. Touch. You look at Stipe Miocic, or you look at Dominic Cruz. You look at any of these guys who change direction quickly. What happens is the elastic nature of their body, they amortize the potential energy of that and shoot off in the other direction fast. So how do you do that? You do that by staying light on your feet and making the connection to the earth shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter, which is how you see those guys when they're doing the running things on the ladder. Do you see that guy being suddenly able to punch really hard right there? You don't, right? Because it's speed and it's agility and it's direction change and it's mobility. Then you take Jeremy Stephens and Mike Tyson. Whoa, sorry. I'm wearing a microphone and I touch it with my foot because I'm getting excited. Or Mike Tyson, and you step that foot down and you connect to the earth hard. This is how power was generated in that last wave. Somebody just mentioned TJ Dillashaw, Will Asia. I'm getting to that. You're reading my mail, man. So the connection to the earth is that generation of power. And you think about it, when you're told how to throw a right cross, they say crush the cigarette. So the ball of your foot is like crushing a cigarette to create power. You can kind of see it as somebody, this from here, through the hip, through the elasticity of the connection of the torso, into the power connected to the leg. Somebody said John Anik is awesome. John Anik is awesome. I love that. One day I'm going to be working with you, John Anik. I'm going to call some fights together. So you are connecting to the earth to develop power. So the two extremes, and what's fascinating is for long periods of their career, Jeremy Stephens and Dominic Cruz trained together. And they almost became somewhat opposites in how they expressed fighting. And these are the beauties of fighting. These are the fascinating things. This is where somebody will see two paintings and someone will go, that one's blue and that one's got checkers. And somebody else will look at it because they spend a lot of time looking at it and be able to see these other things. These things are all there for us to see too. You know, it isn't just striker versus grappler or who's the better boxer. These things, these ways that the human body expresses this are so different. And there's thousands of these variables that are all at play all the time. And I think that this, as much as, you know, here on my YouTube channel, you guys are gracious enough to hang out and be interested in this. I personally think that the mainstream audience can handle most of this stuff. In football, they don't dumb it down. Football fans all over the world watch complex ideas every single day. Baseball fans are bombarded with statistics, and none of them change the channel because they don't like it to be detailed or extra layers to be peeled back. Everybody's interested in that. And if they're not, they order another beer, or they you know, hang out with their friends, or they do something else. So I'm sorry, this might do something. No, we're good. So anyway, so this connection between the earth and mobility is a push and a pull. Somebody's like, well, why can't Dominic Cruz develop more power? Well, according to that way of expression, to do that, he would reduce his mobility. And this isn't pure, and it's already changed. So I'm giving you the old, but please don't start cataloging this as, you know, that this inverse proportionality between these two, this isn't permanent. This is how it was, right? This is how it was. So Will brought up TJ Dillashaw. Duho is another example. So Dwayne, I've got some Bang Ludwig gloves over here. They're sometimes in this room, but they're over there. So Dwayne Ludwig, a lot of these coaches, I'm always really excited to see them. I got to travel a lot more this year, and Dwayne will always be very generous with ideas with me. He's also giving me things that he wants people to know because he knows that I get excited and want to share it. But so I was talking to him about this relationship, and he's like, you know, he was acknowledging that this was so, but it is not so anymore. And then he showed me a few examples. I'm wired up here. I've got a little mic, so I can't quite do it. But about how stepping and creating motion can also create power. And that is a part of what Dwayne has done with TJ, is he doesn't have to leverage the ability to create force for mobility, and he doesn't have to leverage mobility to create more force. He uses movement to create force, right? And that's what Duho's doing. That's what Conor McGregor's doing. That's what TJ's been doing for a long time. And that's probably the changes that you'll see in what Dom's been doing when we get to see him next. Are you reading this? I'm reading the odd one, but it's very difficult to express ideas in a free-form way like this and also read your questions. I'm so sorry I can't read them all, but I'll get to some at the end. So that's the long way where we've got to this one relationship between men. And again, you know, people do ask me, could you make shorter or more technical, basic technical breakdowns? Please go to my Instagram. I made one today. There's also a Kelvin Gastelum, Michael Bisping one that I did earlier that, you know, 13 or 15,000 people seem to enjoy, which was very nice. And I like making those. But these are the layers which lead to the ability to make that. You have to do this kind of study and this kind of research and find and feel and connect to these ideas. Because just saying, you know, he's got more power or just saying he's got better distance management doesn't actually connect you, and so you feel it. You want to feel it when you see it. You don't want to watch a fight and say that was a low kick or he's got more volume. You want to feel and experience this thing. Because when you watch a great movie, you experience it. You do. You don't just watch it and go, I wonder how they made that camera shot, or, you know, who's that actor? Sometimes you break out of it and do that, of course. But when you watch Avatar, you're there. When you listen to great music, you're not wondering what, oh, look, I recognize that drum fill. You're feeling it. Fights are like that. And the nature of television itself has shaped us to consume. Television is a very modern thing. It's been done a particular way. It's stuck with those formulas for a little too long. And as a result, it has shaped how we look at things like football and baseball and fighting. And we don't have to. There are many ways to look at it. Many, 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 many different layers. And once you understand them in different ways, you don't have to do this all the time. Sometimes you just turn a fight on and you go, oh my God, Ronda got kicked in the head. That's crazy. And that's beautiful too. But if you really are a fan of football, you start to understand what's happening. You see, you read those plays. And fighting is the same way. So now what these guys are able to do, they found that basically a lot of what's happening now was these great coaches. So understand this as well, please. The conversation that we are having on Twitter about fighting is not the real world that these guys are living in. When we talk, oh, this guy's got to get some more volume, or why didn't Jose Aldo throw leg kicks? It's like that question is so many layers behind his understanding of the fight that he's in and his coach. Do you really think that Jose and his coach are just really dumb and they don't know they should throw leg kicks? The dynamic of fighting Max Holloway changed in such a way that leg kicks would be dangerous to throw. Holloway created scenarios in which if you throw leg kicks, you get fucked, right? So that's what's happening. And I compared it the other day to that show with the robots, Westworld. The people visiting Westworld are not having the same experience as the people living in Westworld. And we are the visitors in fighting. And that goes for most of the people who report on it and talk about it and whatever. We are seeing a surface that is not really what's in there. And so what I've been trying to do, and what I'm hoping to do, and what I do my best to do when I get to talk to these guys and interview them and share training with them, and then here, is try to dig into the real world of it, not the surface world that we all think is real. Okay, so this is what's happening in these fights. So where does that leave Jeremy Stephens? Jeremy Stephens' game over time has had to be the opposite of what Dom's needing to do. Dom has had to, over time, figure out how to add power through mobility. And Jeremy Stephens has had to figure out the way to add mobility without losing power. Okay, that's the game for Stephens. And I just made a little jot down of what his last while has been. I love Jeremy Stephens. It's like, how can you not? He's also, I've spent time chatting with him a few times, and he's highly intelligent. So he understands what he's seeing, very much so. He's also, there are times where you make one mistake and you're done. There's a fight with Jeremy Stephens, and I think it was Hani Jason. Forgive me if it was a different guy. It was somebody who came from the Tough Brazil, and the guy slipped out his head. Jeremy was throwing a right hand, and the guy slipped to this side like once, and I think he faked the right hand, and he did it again, so he just head kicked him, and it was over. Because if I put my head here, and Jeremy wants my head there to land the head kick, it's a done deal. Done deal. And you see, actually, you know what? I'm going to go and break that one down today. I'm going to go and break it down. It'll be on Instagram and Twitter with hopefully in a couple hours, but the latest tomorrow morning. Jeremy Stephens with that head kick knockout. Because the one I did on Instagram today of Ho Choi was just a little, touch to move the hand and boom. And this thing is equally smart. Jeremy just spots something, throws a fake to make sure it's coming, and then done deal. It's wicked. So Jeremy's super smart. Also, even years ago when he was fighting Max Holloway, I was chatting with him and he was talking about the idea. And it's an idea I love, an analogy that I love, which was just that he sees the game, and RDA is really good at this, sees the game as his hips are the headlights of a car, and then where the lights go, that's where he needs to keep you. He doesn't have to be dead in front of you. He doesn't have to be cutting you off in the most typical of ways or the most standard of ways. Please ask me these questions again, because it looks like there's some good ones here. But he just needs to keep you in his headlights. And that's a simple analogy that I've used ever since. I try to always credit Jeremy, but you use an analogy the 40th time, and you can't always. But to kind of keep that in there. And then so that's what he wants to do with Ho Choi. The issue is Ho's also playing with that fencing range, and he's playing with the up and down, and he's playing with 3 dimensions of placement. So where his targets are very hard to hit. And if Jeremy hasn't added to that quick movement mobility, it's going to be tough. But you look back, he lost to Holloway, then he beat Barao. And the Barao fight, Barao is in this same boat. Also, Barao's best years, perhaps so far, are looking like they may have happened. That happens to all great athletes and artists. But it was fight of the night. He beat Barao. Then he lost to to Edgar, and the mobility was the issue. Against Holloway, tracking him down and trapping him was the issue. That's the issue. Go back and watch it. That's the issue. Then against Edgar, same issue. Then he fought a kid called Marciano and lost that one. That was a close fight. And then against Gil Melendez, Gil moves in this sort of that 2.0 way as well, where he's connected to the earth and he's looking, a lot of exposure. His chin is where you can hit it a lot, and yours is too. And he thinks he's going to win that most of the time, and he is. And the two of them did a lot of that. And they got another fight tonight. So to see this for Jeremy, and then in there also there was a knockout of Dennis Bermudez. And the knockout of Bermudez was Jeremy also going, you know what, I'm just going to be myself. And it worked, and he knocked him out. So forcing yourself to change or evolve with some time where everything is going sounds great, but sometimes just being authentic to your identity is great. And so I'm interested to see what Stephens does. I'm hoping for Duho, as a fan of Ho Choi, I'm a fan of both, that Duho is free out there. He hasn't changed his game much, but when I saw him, one of the reasons he's so good at the things he's so good at is he loves to do the things he's so good at. That right hand, he's been throwing it thousands of times a week since he was 14 years old. And there's subtleties. It moves here, and it moves here, and it moves there, and he fakes it, and it's so beautiful. The way he uses it is so beautiful. And somebody said Choi can't be knocked out. Cub clocked him with some pretty incredible, generated incredible force. And that fight's, go watch it. As soon as you get off here, please go to shopropandblack.com and then go watch that fight, because it's something very special. Cub and Choi, watching that with Kelvin Gastelum was one of the most nerve-wracking and painful but joyful experiences I've ever had watching fighting. So where do we leave that? I'm sorry that often people are like, well, so who's going to win? I don't know. Nobody knows. Another thing that I'm hoping that we can slowly wean out of how television has shaped our thinking. Producers have said since the 70s, pick a winner. Oh, he's picking him, you go with him. And that binary thinking, nobody knows. Even guys who get it right 6 times out of 10, which is very high, they don't know. Nobody knows. There's 1,000 variables, 1,000,000 variables. Bet if you like, but to me it's crazy. But that thinking has been shaped by producers and television. It has. And I'm hoping over time that we can find other ways to do it. Because slowly, all we are is two sides. I believe this, and you believe this. I think this president's awesome, and you think he's terrible. Or vice versa, or whatever. I don't want to get into that kind of shit. And we just war. And then somebody wins or somebody loses, and pretty soon we just shape it. Oh, that was unfair. The ref got it wrong. And we just argue. All about something that nobody knows. So I'm sorry, I'll probably never give you a guess, an educated guess, because you can't predict fighting. And I'm sorry, I also won't tell you my opinion of who's the better striker, but who's the better grappler, but who's got better takedown defense, because I think that's a TV mechanism. We're trying to slowly introduce different layers of ways to look at this great art. So here, as we're watching this one, watch to see Ho Choi's game of playing the way that a fencer in and out plays with range and timing. Watch his feints. Watch Jeremy get reads. I'll do that breakdown of Stephens, if I can find it and get it, of Stephens' knockout in the next few hours. That'll show you how Stephens can read you. Watch Stephens. Has he leveraged some of his power or his ability to create power? I'm sorry. Nobody has power. It's another thing I always want to point out. Nobody has power. Power is not something you have. Power is something you create. Power is something you create. And you create it starting from a connection to the earth. So will Jeremy, or in the old days, Dwayne Ludwig and many others, you talk to Duke, you talk to all the best. They've all found new ways to create power with mobility or combine mobility and force and connection to the earth. They're breaking that rule, that old thing we thought was so. You were either mobile or powerful. That's all changing now. Fighting's changing constantly. Any of those rules that we think are rules are not rules. So But yeah, watch for Jeremy. Has he leveraged that a little bit, and maybe he's a little less connected to the earth, or he is for shorter periods, or he corners you and then sits with that term, sitting down on your punches. You're moving, you're moving, you're moving. But if I really have you there for long enough to throw 3, maybe then I'm heavily connected to the mat. So we're going to watch for that out of Stephens. We're going to see. Can Cub make a miss? Can Cub tie his shoelaces together with, or Choi tie his shoelaces together with the movement? All that. I'm going to watch for all that. We're going to enjoy it. And I'm going to come back and do more here because I'm watching these fights of these two. We got 2 weeks till this is on, a little less. So I'm going to watch these guys even more and find some more dynamics between them. So please pop back in. And we're going to shoot a whole bunch of stuff tomorrow at one of the studios that we sometimes use. And so we'll be having stuff coming up on YouTube for the next couple weeks. But I thank you for hanging with me. Like I said, I do work for other people in other places. And when I do that, sometimes these are much more structured and much more open-ended. So I'd invite you, if that's something you prefer, tsn.ca/UFC, much more 1 and 2 minute chunks of what you're accustomed to in the television created world. I also do stuff. There is some stuff I've done with Choi and Korean Zombie. Hopefully it's coming out on Monster Zim. I'll touch base with them today and see where that is. It's maybe hopefully coming out soon. And I think sometimes I like to break down some of the fights from Russia and KSW, and those I do in bite-sized chunks. But here on my YouTube channel, this is what gives me joy, and I'm really glad that you guys come here with me. ShopRobinBlack.com, check it out. Please, if you get one of these or a Flim Flam shirt or any of those, please put it on Instagram and link me. I want to see you guys wearing them. And please let me know also what you thought of my Instagram and Twitter, do Ho Choi 1 minute breakdown, and watch for the Jeremy one later. And please hit me up on Twitter with any thoughts or questions about this fight, and we'll do another deep dive into it in a couple of days. I really, really appreciate you guys a lot. Enjoy the hostilities, my friends.